2016 sucked. And yeah, I know compared to the present day in 2018, 2016 feels like a quaint memory where we were all still so young and naive, but let me mentally teleport you back to 2016 for just a moment. There was of course all the obvious drama and day-to-day anxiety caused by the build-up to the US presidential election in November. All of your favorite celebrities were dying, and we were all still trying to collectively cope with the fact that they were now letting women use lightsabers and black people be stormtroopers. So yeah, 2016 sucked. On an almost entirely unrelated note, 2016 was also the year I played Dark Souls for the first time, and that didn't suck. It was actually pretty great. It was so great, in fact, that in the span of 1 month I played all 3 Dark Souls games to completion. But the downside is that I came out the other side of that experience feeling a bit exhausted. So even though I had already purchased Bloodborne, I decided to save it for a special occasion. Well, as it turned out, that special occasion just so happened to be Tuesday, November 8th, 2016. Well, I guess it was the day after to be more accurate, but who's counting? But before we get any further, first a disclaimer and some background information. For starters, I don't really care if you're a huge Donald Trump fan. Well, okay, I do care. In fact, that actually concerns me quite greatly, but for the purposes of this video, I don't care. All you really need to know is that, much like 2016, I think he sucks. And let's be honest, if you voted for Trump, you probably didn't make it past the Star Wars joke I made 45 seconds ago. So the other important thing you need to know is that in November of 2016, I was living in San Francisco, California, or as some fair and balanced news channels would have you believe, an utter cesspool of socialism and leftist ideological propaganda. To say that the city took Donald Trump's victory pretty hard would be a bit of an understatement. People called in sick to work and just generally didn't leave their house unless they had to. There was this thick, depressive malaise that just hung in the air like a miasma. It was like the whole city was in mourning and there was really no way to escape it. You'd go to work and that's all anyone was talking about. You'd go to the store to pick up some milk and that's still all anyone was talking about. And heaven forbid you go on the internet because that is definitely what everyone was talking about there. This was definitely one of those times where you wanted to retreat inward, to find your happy place and get lost in a piece of escapism you loved and cherished. And yeah, I didn't do that. Instead, I played Bloodborne. Now, you might be saying to yourself, Drew, buddy, that sounds like a terrible idea. Why would you play a game that's known for being ruthlessly difficult? But I'm definitely not alone here. There are tons of essays and videos by people who talk about how a game in the Souls series helped them fight through depression. And well, I wouldn't have called myself depressed at the time. I have suffered from real clinical depression in the past, and this wasn't one of those moments, but I think we were both getting similar things out of these games. In my particular case, it didn't feel like it was just a systemic thing I was finding relief in. There was something uniquely specific about Bloodborne that made it feel more cathartic than even any of the other Souls games would have. It probably had something to do with all the blood. It was more than just escapism through violence, or the confidence of mastering a system, or even immersing yourself in a world of uncertainty and chaos. It was all those things combined. Even though it was released in March of 2015, Bloodborne felt like a game tailor-made for November of 2016. Because the world of Bloodborne felt so connected to my own world I was stuck in, there was a palpable cleansing nature to the buckets of blood that spilled out of every monster you killed. I've really grown less and less enamored with satire as I've gotten older, and I don't know that I would call Bloodborne satirical. At least, I don't think that's what the creators originally intended, but there's definitely something about the over-the-top nature to how much the game revels in literal blood that added to my experience. Bloodborne felt like so much more of a reflection of the world around me than its predecessors did because, to me, Dark Souls is really a game about exploring the world after the apocalypse, but Bloodborne is a game about living through that apocalypse, and yeah, that kinda resonated with me. And there's also something to be said about the fact that the world of Bloodborne draws so heavily from the works of H.P. Lovecraft. There was definitely something harmonious about immersing yourself in a world built around unknowable horrors, where you couldn't even see some of the monsters that were right in front of you unless you willfully embraced madness. It felt good to throw yourself into the depths of that hole, into a place where the only way to escape wasn't to try and crawl your way back up. but to sink further down into it. You could delve deeper and deeper into the muck and mire, and then when you needed to, with just the push of a button, you could make that whole world go away. You could make it stop. Sure, in the real world, you can turn off the news, you can delete all your social media accounts, you can try and insulate yourself from the horrors as much as humanly possible, but you can never truly escape it. Even if you manage to completely ignore it, the world still goes on without you. The monsters don't stop going to work just because you're not looking anymore. Real-world ignorance has real-world consequences, and sometimes it isn't even your own ignorance that catches up to you. In the real world, you're often not the one in control, but in Bloodborne, in a very compact and structured way, you are. When life is bearing down on you, there's nothing wrong with wanting to run away to a safe and comfortable place. But I also feel like the idea of self-care through media often only looks like this. It's soft and cuddly, a breath of fresh air, a place to relax and recharge. And I need those places too, but it can also be very rewarding to give yourself a controlled environment to start fighting back. Sometimes you need to flail your arms around, to punch the air in every direction. You need the exertion, the ferocity. And it's not just about the systems or the satisfying game feel. The aesthetics are just as important. You want the horror, you want the enemy to be large, to be intimidating, to be terrifying. You need a punching bag equal to the weight of the world that you feel pushing down on top of you, so it feels that much more liberating when you punch back. Sometimes you need the violence, you need to draw blood, and that's why Bloodborne was such a perfect fit, because, after all, down in Yharnam, blood, well, blood is everything.
We are born of the blood, made men by the blood, undone by the blood. Fear the old blood.
Would you be free from your burden of sin? There's power in the blood, power in the blood. Would you or evil a victory win? There's wonderful power in